everyone, and welcome to this detailed component overview for Kingdom Death Monsters Random Settlement Events, or just Settlement Events. In this video, I will be going over these 20 Settlement Event cards, none of the extra ones that come from either specific mini expansions or the 3 that actually come from regular expansions. Those will be saved for much later videos. I will be going over these both in the sense of just covering them in general and some interactions with mainly innovations, but also some other things. But with that said, let's get up close to these.
We begin with Acid Storm. The air tastes sour and burns the survivors' cracked lips. The sky cracks in great flashes, revealing spiraling black clouds. Finally, it opens, dousing everything in acid rain. Now, before I move on, I do have an idea of what causes the weather in this setting, but that's something I want to leave for a different set of videos. If people would like to hear more about that, go ahead and comment about it. Roll a d10. On a 1, each returning survivor must archive a gear of their choice. This can really suck. Late game. Early game, goodbye cloth. 2 through 5. The survivor with the highest insanity, randomized in case of ties, runs into the storm, bellowing wildly. They must skip the next hunt event. That's not bad. And 6+. Some of the debris around the settlement becomes useful due to the strange effect of the storm. Add 1 scrap to the settlement storage, which again is currently Broken Lantern. Unless there's moments like this when they say add 1 and then the basic type, they mean like just 1 scrap, not a specific type of resource. Lingering effects. You can't use music endeavors. And you get +2 to all art endeavors. This one can actually be really good, especially because of face painting. Then we have a pair of endeavor actions. First one requiring nightmare training, Acid Storm Exercise. Roll a d10, 1 through 5. The survivor is burned to death. Whoops. 6 through 7. You're injured and must skip the next hunt event. Not nearly as bad as the first half. 8+. You gain the following ability. Acid Palms. Add 1d10 strength to your wound attempts when attacking with Fist and Tooth. It's kind of like Sharp, but it's not Sharp because surprisingly, you can gain Sharp on Fist and Tooth. This is one of the major abilities that can stack together to make Fist and Tooth disgusting. Then there's Acid Storm Distillation. Requires cooking. 1 through 4. Nothing happens. 5+. Gain a Founding Stone starting gear. But this does not sound worth doing. Unless you really need a Founding Stone for some reason. Next up, we have Clinging Mist. Now, before I continue, one of the results on this is so potentially game-changing, I am going to give a spoiler warning for this card specifically, even though the context of these videos is inherent spoiler warning. It is specifically the second half of the last part. So if you don't want to know it, stop before I get to 8, 9, 10, and then go to the next card. Ha. The settlement is hidden behind a thick green mist. Something about the way the lantern light passes through it makes it seem alive. Roll a d10. On a 1 through 3, the mist touches skin. Bright red boils bloom into existence. The painful boils leave the survivors desperately scratching themselves. Returning survivors suffer the worst, and all must skip the next hunt. Just to be clear, that's just the returning survivors, not everyone. Some of the grammar on these is kind of but nobody's dead, so that's good. 4 through 7. Do you have ammonia? Let's start with yes. Nominate a survivor to douse themselves in urine and run through the settlement, clearing the mist away. They gain +3 understanding, but -1 permanent luck for being so gross. One of the largest static gains in understanding in the game. But if you don't have ammonia, as the mist grows thicker, its tendrils take on a strange, horrific form. The returning survivors make it back to the settlement, trembling and exhausted. Each gains a random disorder. 8 through 10. Does the settlement have guideposts? And this is, did the Kingsmen come around and drop it off and you didn't get it pulled out? Yes. The light from the lantern halberd cuts through the mist and guides the survivors back to the settlement. Discard this event and draw a new one. That's actually kind of annoying. I'd rather have the middle one over this. Or, in some cases, no, you don't have a guidepost. Returning survivors must go on another hunt immediately without departing or changing gear, and that implies you do still get heals because
the settlement event is not the first step of the settlement phase. Or become starting survivors for a new settlement, starting with the first story settlement phase. This is one of the methods in the game for New Game Plus. It sucks if you have a group that you don't want to do this with, be it they have crappy gear or crappy characters, can't reproduce, or you're just that far along. But yeah, this is one of those ways. Next, we have cracks in the ground. I love how scared some people are of this one, and you're about to see why. A low rumbling fills the settlement. Small cracks in the earth widen into fissures that belch up hot, foul-smelling vapors. It's assumed you roll a 1d10 here as well, even though it doesn't say so. On a 1, a massive crack splits the ground in two. Any returning survivors with heavy gear are dead. Archive any heavy gear in the dead survivors' gear grid. It is lost with their body. That really sucks. And this alone is one of the reasons people are afraid to walk around with heavy gear sometimes. I prefer just use a survival of the fittest to avoid it. Or, oh well, that sucks. 2 through 5. Doesn't get much better. The returning survivor with the lowest movement falls into the crack. Roll off in the case of ties. They are dead. At least you get to keep the gear. And on a 6+, so the most likely case, you find a sharp stone in the rubble left from the quake. Gain 1 founding stone starting gear. As for the lingering effects, the cracks prevent all home endeavors, and the vapors improve breathing, +1 to the results of nightmare training endeavor. Which does mean nightmare training can't kill you unless you have some other negative. And then we have 2 endeavor abilities. Vapor visions. Spend 3 organs. Roll d10. This requires the hunt shrine. 1 through 6. Memory loss. Set your weapon proficiency to 0. That can really suck, but you really shouldn't be risking that if you have probably even a 1. 7+. Gain the following ability. Mad Oracle. Once per showdown, as a monster draws an AI, name a card out loud. If the card drawn is the card you named, gain +1 evasion token. It's a token, not evasion for the turn, so that can be useful, and it doesn't say you can lose it by other means, so if you have Rhythm Chaser, you can lose it. If you have Rawhide Headband and use it before this goes off, you'll know what it is, or at least should. Some monsters get kind of screwy. Then we've got Vapor Scars. Spend 3 resources. Any 3. Requires scarification. 1 through 6. You fall into a hole. You are dead. 7+. Scorching Vapor Kiss. Gain the following ability. Burnt Nerves. You're immune to bash. Which is awesome. Not really worth the risk on a built-up character, but this is one of those in the same category as feeding somebody one of the stat bugs. Next, we have Dark Dentist. This one I find a little odd, but at the same point in time, it can be useful. It's also a little risky. A cloaked woman enters the settlement. All that can be seen beneath her hood is the sparkle of perfect teeth. She offers to improve the survivors if they are brave enough. The lingering effects. And I want to point out, since this goes straight into lingering effects, this has no immediate good or bad. This is one of the ones where you have to make the choice to have something good or bad happen. Mend bones. 3 bones or 1 skull. The woman fixes your broken mouth. Heal the shattered jaw, severe injury. Now, before I get into the next 2, I just want to point out there's an asterisk next to them, and I'll get to what that is after these. Monster tooth dentures. 4 bone or 1 large flat tooth. The woman upgrades your mouth. Gain a +1 strength once per lifetime. For this, I would say the 4 bone itself isn't worth it. 1 large flat tooth can be, but again, we'll get to that asterisk and depends if whether or not you need it. But 1 resource for a permanent stat boost is nice. Next, we have Metal Jaw, which requires 2 iron. Note also, these are crafting effects, not endeavors. Gain the following ability. Metal Maw. Your fist and tooth gains sharp. And that's how you get sharp on it and why the acid ability stacks. This can be immensely worth it. Just remember it's 2 iron, not 2 scrap. Except, again, here we are. Before gaining the benefits of Monster Tooth Dentures or Metal Jaw, roll 1d10 to see if the surgery was successful. 1 or 2, you die. The dentist offers your skull to the settlement as an apology. Add 1 skull to the settlement storage. That can be great, people of the skull, but otherwise, although it could help with this next effect. 3 through 5, the surgery fails. Suffer the shattered jaw, severe injury, which again can be fixed on this card. And 6 through 10, so still the most likely effect, the surgery is successful.
Dark Traitor. This one's kinda but if you like gambling, here you go. A corpulent man reclines on a chair carried on the backs of 4 cloaked men. I do kind of want a miniature of that. He offers to sell the settlement many amazing treasures. Each item may be purchased once. Again, just like the previous card, goes straight into lingering effects, so nothing immediate, and also, these are all craftables, not endeavors. Strange Brew, 6 resources. Yeah, these are expensive. You excitedly consume the brew. Roll a d10. 1 or 2. The liquid freezes your throat. You are dead. That's gotta be a crappy way to go. 3 through 9. Everything goes red. Gain the Rageaholic disorder and the attractional hemorrhaging severe injury. Lovely. 10. It burns your eyes. Gain 1 permanent accuracy. Okay, doesn't make much sense, but whatever. Then we've got the pink stone for 2 resources, which looks like a pink founding stone. 1 or 2. As soon as the trader leaves, you realize that you bought a useless rock. Joy. 3 through 9. It's just a sharp rock. Gain a founding stone gear. Well, in the case of that roll, it is a founding stone. And on a 10, the stone begins to glow. Gain the immortal disorder. Whee! Again, I've gone over my thoughts of that before. Fun disorder, great for some builds, but oh boy, can it be a problem. And last, we have Shiny Sexy Jeweled Thong. Joy. For 7 resources. Ugh. You wear this forever. Roll 1d10. On a 1 or a 2, you look amazing. If only it wasn't so uncomfortable. Suffer a -1 permanent evasion. 3 through 9. It falls apart as soon as the trader leaves. Still not a negative. And 10. Wearing it feels incredible. Gain +1 permanent luck. Honestly, I don't think any of that's worth 7 resources, especially early game. The Elder Council. The main reason to keep track of your retired characters. The elders of the settlement gather to reminisce over their hard-won scars. Count the total number of Hun XP among all survivors. This does include retired. Add the bonuses and consult the table. So these are 3 specific innovations, being Saga, Scarification, and Records. And then it's a various table going from 0 to 100 plus. 0 through 6. All survivors gain +1 understanding. Pretty good for, hey, this is your first hunt, or hey, bad shit happened and there isn't a lot of Hun XP now. Feels like a consolation prize, though. At least better than the next one. Next is 7 through 20. -2 endeavors. Note these aren't to spend. Same goes for the next 2. You lose these endeavors. The Elder teaches up to 2 survivors with 0 Hun experience an old trick. They each gain +1 permanent accuracy and 10 survival. 21 through 50. One of the Elders recalls a story of a bizarre lion it met on a dangerous hunt. The monster was mourning and in its paws held a tattooed human head. Add Beast of Sorrow to your quarry list. You will find its rules in the Legendary Monster Story Event page. You may now hunt this monster. This is, as it says, a legendary monster. This is the hardest to unlock, actually, because it is by pure happenstance, while the others you can cause. 51 through 99. -1 endeavor, -2 resources. An elder decides to hunt again. A retiring survivor must join the next hunting party. This does not unretire them permanently, just for the one hunt. And on 100 plus, also making the negatives clear of you just lose them, you may spend 1 endeavor. If you do, the Elder Council passes its wisdom on. Nominate a survivor with 1 hunt XP or less, and go through story events age 1 and 2. That survivor may gain these benefits again when they reach their hunt XP milestones. This can be really awesome, but as anybody who's seen those tables, they still come down to RNG if they are. Glossolalia. The settlement calls out to the returning survivors in a chorus of unknown tongues. Each survivor in the settlement begins to speak in their own incomprehensible language, until all sounds of the settlement are replaced with never-ending babble. Nominate 1 survivor. Does not have to be a returning survivor. 1 through 3. The survivors begin to argue endlessly with everyone. -3 endeavors. This sucks early on. I've had this in the first 3 lantern years so many times. 4 through 7. The waves of madness pass for some, but not all. The nominated survivor gains the endless babble impairment. When you depart, departing survivors gain +1 insanity. You may not encourage. Great for insanity builds, but the lack of encouragement kinda sucks. If you have a shattered jaw already, cool, still endless babble. 8+. The nominated survivor's words carry above all others. As they speak, the others begin to learn their language impossibly fast. The nominated survivor gains +2 understanding and adds the title Father of Words to their name. Your settlement may endeavor at science and education innovation normally this settlement phase, which, under lingering effects, are 2 types of things you can't do normally. Then we also have 2 endeavor actions. Automatic writing, which requires pictographs. 1 through 6, you write the story of your death. Gain 1 disorder. 7 through 9, your scribblings are meaningless. Gain 2 insanity. And on a 10, as your mind clears, you glean secrets from your own mad design. Gain the crazed fighting art. Don't know how I feel about this whole action. Then we have Deep Listen. Spend 2 resources. Without language to distract them, the settlement learns to time their movements to the beating of their hearts. Departing survivors gain +1 movement token. Endeavor here once per settlement phase. This can be good if you've got excess resources, but definitely bad early on. This is one of those, I have 2 resources I don't know ever what to do with. Alright, next up we have Haunted. The survivor with the lowest hunt XP, choose in case of a tie, is convinced a powerful presence is nearby. Roll a d10. 1 through 3. The survivor panics and zealously preaches that they are not alone in the settlement. No one can spend endeavors or innovate this settlement phase. You may avoid this by exiling the nominated survivor into the darkness, killing them. Honestly, I don't think that's a bad choice, unless they're like some super statted character. 4 through 7 asks, do you have Song of the Brave? If yes, a disembodied lullaby sings to the settlement. With aching hearts, any returning survivor may join the chorus and gain 1d5 insanity. Not bad. If you don't have Song of the Brave, while everyone sleeps, the survivors burst into incomprehensible song. The whole settlement awakens in tears. -1 endeavor, returning survivors set their insanity to 0. And 8 through 10 asks if you have Memento Mori. If yes, in tears, the survivor may spend 2 endeavors to create a small memento of a felled monster from the past. If they do, no one else ever notices it, despite its display. The survivor gains +2 understanding, 1d10 insanity, and the 0 present secret fighting art. Definitely worth the 2 endeavors unless you really don't want that fighting art for some reason. If you don't have Memento Mori, the survivor paints their blood in patterns all over the settlement. They permanently gain +2 strength and +1 accuracy, and the following ability. Possessed. Cannot use weapon specializations, weapon mastery, or fighting arts. So hand them something, that doesn't really need those. AKA make them a support character. Next, we have Heatwave. It is impossibly hot. Any returning survivors with heavy or fur gear have a heat stroke and may not depart this lantern year. Kind of annoying, but whatever. Otherwise, straight on to lingering effects. The Heatwave prevents science and education endeavors. That sucks. If you depart with heavy gear in your gear grid, set your survival to 0 after applying all bonuses. Ugh. So if you really need that heavy gear, make sure you use the herb gathering event on your first space, if you have it available. And then it gives 2 endeavor actions. Find fluids. 1 through 5, nothing. 6 through 7, you may depart with heavy gear normally, so counteract the ability from before. Your settlement finds enough fluids to deal with the heat. You may endeavor normally, counteracting the other ability. The other endeavor action being breathing fumes. 1 through 5, scrape boil goo from the bottom of a pot and inhale. +1 understanding. Pass out. Skip the next hunt. 6 through 7, gain a random disorder and trigger intimacy. Okay. 8+, horizons expand. Gain the extra sense fighting art. Again, nice fighting art. And if you have cooking, you will gain the crafting option of Superheated Beverage, which is a fresh Arcanthus, 5 organ, and 4 bone, for 1 permanent strength. That is expensive, but at no risk. So, it's up to you.
Hutten Reenactment. Nominate the group's favorite survivor to play the hunter. Nominate your least favorite survivor to play the monster. Pick one monster from the settlement's list of defeated monsters. 1 through 3. Costume claws draw real blood, and the hunter falls. The survivor nominated to be the hunter is dead. That sucks. The survivor nominated to be the monster gains monster claw style fighting art. Really awesome fighting art, but then it would go on, assuming you chose accurately, your least favorite survivor. 4 through 7 asks if the monster you chose is a nemesis monster. If not, the monster falls, silencing the crowd with a sickening crack. The survivor nominated to be the monster dies. The survivor nominated to be the hunter sets their insanity to 0. So bad for both. And if yes, a glorious synchronized performance. Both nominated survivors gain the following ability. Fated Blow. At the start of the showdown, with the picked monster, gain +1 speed token. Not bad. Before this, for reasons that I'll eventually go over in my Butcher videos, I recommend the Butcher, at least when it comes to the core game Nemesis fights. Otherwise, unless you have a Nemesis that you've had trouble with, then I would choose that one, but also that assumes you'll survive to it. Then again, this could come up any year. And 8 through 10 asks if the monster was a quarry instead. No. The fight reaches a fever pitch. The settlement hangs on every moment as the hunter ritualistically finishes the monster. As the monster feigns death, the settlement cheers their champion. The hunter gains the last man standing fighting art. And if it was a quarry monster, through the performance, the settlement relives a heroic moment of their survival. This settlement phase, all departing survivors gain survival up to the survival limit. And honestly, because of all this, I recommend you always choose a nemesis if you can. Obviously, you can't for the first few years, and you have to succeed at killing one. Otherwise, Lights in the sky. A spectacular light show erupts against the limitless darkness above. Swirling, vivid trails streak overhead. They lift everyone's spirit. And then, this is another one of those straight-on to lingering effects. The settlement's collective imagination is set aflame. After rolling for any endeavor, you may add 1 or 2 to the results. And then there's 3 separate endeavor actions, each requiring a different innovation. If you have graves, once per settlement phase, on a 1 through 5, the settlement celebrates the light of the departed as they streak past, gain +2 survival. On a 6+, a column of light strikes you. You are filled with the memory of the dead. If insane, add 3 armor to every location when you depart this lantern year. The grammar there implies this is 1 survivor, not each departing. If you have face paint, once per settlement. On a 1 through 5, no one recognizes you while your face is painted. Add the Stranger in the Dark settlement event to the timeline next year. We'll get to that one. On an 8+, I'm guessing since these are all on a 1 through 5 or 6+, this is intended to be a 6+. A column of light strikes you, infuses your body, and you become stronger. Gain the Quixotic disorder. This is actually one of the good disorders. And finally, if you have Inner Lantern, also once per settlement phase, on a 1 through 5, Silent Reflection. Gain a fighting art of your choice. That is amazing. But on a 6+, add the Skull Eater settlement event to the timeline next year and gain +1 in understanding. Honestly, other than that last bit, all of this is amazing, and even that last one can be. It's just all of these other ones are entirely positive. And Skull Eater, well, you'll see when I get to it. Speaking of one that's related to Skull Eater, murder. This is one of the more sucky ones, although it can have some benefits. Someone in the settlement has been murdered. The survivor with the highest hunt XP is the victim. They are dead. This is less of an issue actually later on, because retired from max hunt XP survivors count towards this. The murderer, the survivor with the highest insanity, was caught in the act and is awaiting punishment. Keep in mind, if the person with the highest hunt XP is the person with the highest insanity, you choose the second highest insanity because that comes afterwards. AKA, the highest insanity was killed then. Select the table that corresponds with your settlement society principle and roll a d10 to determine the fate of the murderer. So the first 2 are assuming you got to the appropriate population and made a choice. The third one, well, That's if you didn't. Collective Toil. 1 through 6. The murderer is banished. Add Strangers in the Dark settlement event to the timeline 3 years from now. This year, the departing survivors feel a strong sense of community. Each one gains a random fighting art. On a 7+, though, the murderer is sent into the darkness. They return with 1 Iron Strange resource and the Immortal Disorder. Okay. Now, if your settlement went with Accept the Darkness, on a 1 through 3, the murderer is slaughtered, and their blood is painted onto the bodies of the survivors, empowering them. Departing survivors this lantern year gain +2 survival, and add 1 armor to each hit location. Not bad. 4+. The murderer becomes the undisputed boss of the settlement and gains +3 hunt XP. Each player selects 1 fighting art and 1 disorder. The murderer takes all of them, replacing any existing fighting arts or disorders they have. This can get really interesting. I've seen this happen once, and it can result in one of 3 things based on how you play the game. Either you pick the optimal build for them, or you let them pick themselves, assuming you have 3+ players. Otherwise, you get 2 or 1. People pick whatever they think is best, and then that player decides. Or you go with a more role-playing thing, which can get really interesting. This ends up actually a total pain in the ass time-wise, though, and will basically result in a massive, you need to take a break. More so if you have expansions. And if you never got a society principle, and that is the same face for the murder model, I believe. 1 through 3, the murderer is killed. 4 through 7, the other survivors in the settlement cannot determine the truth, and reluctantly free the accused. This year's departing survivors gain +5 insanity and -2 survival. 8 through 10, the murderer is heralded as the fiercest warrior in the settlement. They gain +1 permanent strength, +1 courage, and understanding. A skull helm gear card, that's a little gruesome. Add this settlement event to the timeline 1d5 years from now. Yeah, you did good for murder. Keep doing it. So the big reason this sucks, though, is it results in 1 auto death and can easily result in a second one. Nickname. This is one of the more sillier ones. Every returning survivor gets a nickname. Each rolls a d10 on all 3 tables below. Add the nickname to the survivor's current name between their first and their surname. A survivor may only be nicknamed once per lifetime. So this is pretty much, for the most part, get something bad on a 1, get something good on a 10. Get stuff in general if you roll in between. These sets are all split within 5 things, 1 being the first, 2 through 4 being the second, 5 through 6 being the third, 7 through 9 being the fourth, and 10 being the fifth. And in the first set, we've got first Foolish, which is a -1 accuracy, followed by Dingle, then Brainless, then Wise, and finally Shining, giving a +1 permanent accuracy. Then on the second table, we start with Coward, gaining -1 strength, then Sneak, then Fool, then Savior. As a note, Saviors always use this result. Finished off by Hero, giving a permanent strength. And on the third table, we have Of Darkness, giving a -1 speed for our second. Of the Lantern. Third, we have Of the Lion, then Of the Antelope, and finally Of the Phoenix for +1 speed. So you can easily end up with Brainless Fool of the Darkness, or something along those lines. It's just silly. There is also a lingering effect at the end, which requires pictographs. Rename. Spend 1 organ, and on a d10, for 1, gain a nickname. Roll on the table above. And on a 2+, you may change your first name, meaning you get the new survival or anything else that comes with name changing, which is a lot of random things nowadays. Next, we have Open Maw. This can potentially sort of break the game in a let's unbalance the early game, but other things can do this as well. A large stone face slowly opens its mouth. Survivors prove their bravery by running into it. And then it's just a lingering effect that is a table of the Endeavor action, Brave the Maw. Roll any number of d10s and add the results. If you roll any doubles, The maw snaps shut, leaving you trapped in the darkness. You are dead, and no one else may endeavor here this year. On a 1 through 7, with a sickening, grinding sound, the mouth bites you. Suffer the dismembered leg severe injury. Ugh. 8 through 15, you hesitate at the edge of darkness. If you have 3 plus courage, you may roll again using 1 more d10. So nothing inherently bad on that one. 16 through 22, you brave the darkness of the mouth for just a moment before bolting to safety. Gain +2 courage. 23 through 31, you fumble through the darkness, grasping for some proof of your brave journey. Something sharp and wriggly comes away from the wall. Gain +2 courage and 2 random vermin resources. So this and the previous one make this actually a very good way to generate courage, at, of course, a risk. 32 through 39. Days later, you return to your settlement with a strange sword in your hand. Gain the lantern sword gear. If possible, you must be a departing survivor this year. This is the thing that can actually unbalance the game, because it means you can potentially get a lantern sword, a 1.0 core game endgame item, as early as Lantern Year 2. I will cover that item in a much later video. And 40 plus, you reach the end and return. Your hair shocked white and your eyes lit with grim determination. Gain the following ability. Iron Will. You cannot be knocked down. Reduce all knockback you suffer to knockback 1. This is amazing, but as you can see, is extremely risky to get. If you manage to get this on a character, I would recommend turning them into your tank ASAP, assuming you go with a tank build. As a note, you need to roll at least 4 dice to get the 32 through 39 result, and at least 5 to get the 40 plus. In fact, with 5, you can get up to 40 on the nose. Plague. This one is horrible. Sickness sweeps through the settlement. Survivors are stricken without warning, made too weak to even care for themselves. Select 4 survivors with at least 1 Hun XP. They are infected. Each rolls 1d10. On a 1 or 2, so 1 in 5 chance. You are dead. The infection spreads. Add Plague to the next Lantern Year on the timeline if it is not already there. Thankfully, it doesn't say then add to the following. But yeah, that means 4 survivors will have a 1 in 5 chance of just being dead. 3 through 8 asks if you have bloodletting. Yes, drained and weak, you manage to survive, but you must skip the next Hun event to recover the blood loss. If not, your body tries to fight the infection. Unless you receive treatment, see below, you will die at the end of the settlement phase. And on a 9 or a 10, you make full recovery. Whee! Sucks for everyone else. And that lingering effect is treatment. It requires ammonia. 1 through 8, select an infected survivor to receive treatment. But on a 9 plus, all infected survivors receive treatment. The settlement resists the infection. If Plague is currently on the timeline, remove it. Not if it's the next year, if it's on it at all. I don't know how it could get further, but that's the wording. This alone is the biggest reason that I recommend always getting ammonia as soon as you can. At least out of the 6 innovations you get after language. Also, bloodletting requires ammonia. And while that's okay, making them skip the next hunt can kind of suck. But ammonia pretty much makes it lose an endeavor per person you want to survive. Next up is rivalry. This one can go in different directions. If there are less than 2 returning survivors, discard rivalry and draw a new event. Select 2 random returning survivors. They begin to argue, and their screams arouse the settlement. Again, another one that doesn't say roll a 1d10, but it's pretty much assumed. 1 through 3, the 2 rivals beat each other up. Neither may depart this phase. 4 through 8, the 2 rivals immediately come to blows. Randomly choose one of the 2 rivals to suffer a gaping chest wound, severe injury. Add rivalry to the next. On a 9 or 10, after hours of yelling, the 2 rivals begin to speak in calm voices. Slowly they come to an understanding. 2 rivals each gain +1 survival and +1 understanding.
So the 4 through 8 is obviously the worst of the 3 results. 1 through 3 sucks if you really wanted to take them the next year, and 9 through 10's pretty good. But it has a lingering effect of the endeavor action of duel. This requires 2 endeavors. On a 1 or a 2, the 2 rivals tear at each other like wild animals. Both nominated survivors are dead. Remove rivalry from the timeline. On a 3 through 7, roll a 1d10 for each rival. The one who rolls higher is the winner. The winner gains +1 permanent strength, and the loser is dead. Remove rivalry from the timeline as well. And on an 8 through 10, after hours of fighting, with no one taking the upper hand, the 2 rivals develop a grudging respect for each other. The settlement gains the partnership innovation. If neither survivor has the partnership skill, both gain it, naming each other as partners. Then, again, remove rivalry from the timeline. So this is pretty much, you don't want rivalry to show back up, and you're willing to chance one, if not both, of the survivors. Next, we have one of the previously mentioned settlement events, Skull Eater. Randomly choose a returning survivor, and give them +3 insanity. If there are no returning survivors, choose a survivor from the settlement to gain +3 insanity. So no getting away from this one. The survivor consumes the skull of a deceased survivor. Even if there isn't one, I've had it happen. They awaken a hunger that cannot be stopped, and roll on the table below. They gain the following impairment: Morrow Hunger. When the murder or Skull Eater settlement events are drawn, this survivor is nominated. And I'm assuming they mean as the murderer, not as the victim for murder. And said table below, Delicious Skulls. The other survivors have learned to fear the Skull Eater's hunger and take matters into their own hand. The Skull Eater is dead. Their skull is used to decorate the settlement as a warning to others. That sucks. 3 through 7. The Skull Eater's activities go unnoticed. They gain +1 permanent strength and +1 courage. Add the murder settlement event to the timeline next year. Great. 8 through 9. The other survivors redirect the Skull Eater's hunger. They may spend 2 endeavors to replace Morrow Hunger impairment with binge eating disorder. If they don't, add the murder settlement event to the timeline next year. And on a 10, Skull Eater may cure themselves. They lose all survival and insanity and skip the next hunt event to remove the Morrow Hunger impairment. If they don't, add the murder settlement event to the timeline next year. This pretty much means either the Skull Eater dies, gets over it, or kills someone. This can be so annoying. Next, we're on to the other previously mentioned settlement event, and my personal favorite, Strangers in the Dark. This one is a little wordy, as not only is it wall of text, there's a table inside the table. Roll a 1d10. Hey, remembered there. 1 or 2. The stranger speaks, calling himself the Horizon Man. He claims to have touched the water in the sky. In a blink of an eye, the man is gone, leaving his lantern and a pile of bones. Add 1 skull, 1 bone, and 1 broken lantern resource to the settlement storage. Not bad for a low roll. 3 or 4. The stranger is a playful woman of unparalleled beauty, clad in what appears to be living tongues. The men of the settlement are instantaneously captivated, while the women are filled with jealousy and suspicion. Eventually chasing the stranger away, male survivors cannot depart this settlement phase, as they are physically ill from love sickness. Departing female survivors gain 10 survival. If the settlement has the guidepost innovation, the stranger effortlessly plucks the lantern halberd from the ground as she is chased away. Archive guidepost. This is a really specific character. If people would like me to go into detail of who this is, go ahead and comment about it. I do intend to go over the setting more someday. Now for the long one. 5 or 6. The stranger is dressed in a black ragged cloak that obscures its form. A myriad of strange lanterns hang from chains wrapped around its body. The stranger speaks in a dark, raspy tone. I am the lamplighter. Give me your light. Each player nominates a different survivor to bring him a lantern and rolls 1d10. FYI, this is not who's on the front of the box. The stranger holds its lantern up to the survivor's face, and the shine fades from their eyes. When the lamplighter leaves, The survivor is found dead. 3 through 6. The stranger makes an off-putting ticking noise, and the lantern light dims slightly. The survivor suffers -1 permanent strength. On a 7+, though, the stranger returns the lantern to the survivor glowing with a beautiful orange light that adds sparkles to their eyes. They gain +1 courage and +1 permanent strength. 7 through 8. My personal favorite result of this settlement event. The stranger calmly explains that he has always been in the settlement. Gain +1 population. The new survivor has the 0 presence secret fighting art. Remember, they don't gain the newborn benefits, though. I've had this actually happen twice in a row somehow. And lastly, on a 9 or a 10, the stranger is desperately clutching a founding stone, naked and covered in blood. Gain +1 population and 1 founding stone. Again, not born in the settlement, though. Next, on to one of the more interesting ones. Triathlon of Death. The settlement engages in games of skill. Each player nominates a different survivor. Each nominated survivor determines their score for each possible contest. Survivor scores determine their place. If the settlement has only one survivor, do not roll. They realize they've been competing against themselves and gain +3 insanity, a random disorder, and the last man standing fighting art. Haven't had that happen yet. First, we have the race contest. Roll a 1d10 and add your movement. First place gets a permanent movement increase, once per lifetime. Second gets a +1 courage. Third gets a new pair of rawhide boots. Don't know where those came from. And fourth suffers the torn Achilles tendon, severe injury. Second, we have the debate contest. Also roll 1d10, add your understanding this time. First, gain bargaining rights and 1 skull basic resource. Second, +1 understanding. The second smartest person learned from the smartest. Third, survivor gets too angry and must skip the next hunt. Fourth, gain the apathetic disorder. That really sucks. Finally, our third contest is a fight contest. Also roll a 1d10 and add your strength this time. First, gain +1 weapon proficiency. Sucks if they don't have one, though. Second, gain +1 permanent strength. Third, gain a random fighting art. And fourth, suffer the dismembered arm severe injury. What the hell are they fighting with? Lastly, if one survivor gets 4th place in all events, they are banished from the settlement and considered dead. Since this doesn't say break for ties, as long as somebody ties or somebody doesn't get all in 4th, they're fine. Also, it says each player nominates someone. So unless you're playing with 4 or more players, this can't happen. And lastly, we have the weirdest settlement, and not just because weird's in the name. Weird Dream. If you're the only player, a survivor dreams about a giant man that controls their lives from the darkness above. All departing survivors gain +3 insanity. The question is that you the player, or is it a specific character in the setting? Otherwise, the group must select a player to be the storyteller and a survivor to be the dreamer. The dreamer has a weird dream, and the storyteller must tell the rest of the group about it. The remaining players will vote to determine if the dream was well told, and then consults the crowd reaction below. Yet, no matter how this goes, every single time, it's just been awkward. Well told. A truly amazing tale. The settlement is inspired and gains 1d5 endeavors. Poorly told. The settlement boos and heckles the dreamer. Add nickname settlement event to the timeline next year, and nominate the dreamer for it. Nominate 3 other survivors, having a great laugh. They gain survival up to the current survival limit if they depart this year. The storyteller may not play as one of these survivors for the next hunt and showdown. Kind of meta there. And they put this afterward instead of beforehand. The selected player rolls 1d10 on each of the following tables to determine what the survivor's weird dream was about. The players should try their best to weave the complete story to share with the other players and the settlement. And oh boy, does this get weird sometimes. So the first table, and all these results are on 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. It's every other number. The first result is a giant butt. Poots. The second result being your child. Then another named survivor, followed by a monster, and lastly, delicious food. Second table starts with running for your life, followed by fighting a tiny monster, then hunting another survivor, then dying a pointless death, and ending with perpetual farting. And our final table starts off with realize that the things from the first list don't exist. Secondly, realize you are the thing from the first list. And third, roll again on the first and second table, followed by wake up, but realize you're still dreaming. And lastly, recall the dream backwards. Like I said, weird.
Alright everyone, thank you for watching. I hope that was helpful. If it was, feel free to press that like button. If you think this will help somebody else, go ahead and share this video. Either way, you'll help this video get seen more. If you didn't like this video, go and press the dislike button. I won't mind, but please leave a constructive comment as to why. Also, feel free to comment in general, such as any of your thoughts on these settlement events. If you'd like to see me do any Let's Plays, or if you'd like me to get around to painting more of the models that I have yet to get around to. And if you'd like to see more like this, be it my unboxing videos, my board game overviews, or my painting videos, all three of which I do for Kingdom Death Monster, and anything else that I do on this channel, feel free to subscribe. Regardless, thank you for watching and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.